Hi, and welcome to the Living in Harmony Family Ministry Podcast, where parents are at the forefront of raising their kids. We exist to help families create a biblical culture in the home while navigating the culture in the world. That being said, welcome to the show. Welcome back to Living in Harmony. We hope, whatever you're doing today, that this podcast makes it a little bit better. We hope that you are having a good day. My name is Delmar.
I'm Robert.
I'm April.
And yeah, it's good to be back. It's good to be back. And like always, really quick, I'd love to hear what you guys got up to this weekend.
Well, this week. This week. So this week we had some people over, and I smoked a brisket, which was pretty tasty. And we ate it.
It was really good. And, you know, I don't know. I think a smoked brisket is one of my love languages, probably growing up in Texas. But we had some of our most favorite people in the world over, and it was fun. It was Valentine's Day, and we got to spend it with some of the people that we love to do life with.
And I was lucky enough to be part of those people.
Yes, you were.
That was something we did in our family this week. We went to your house and ate brisket. And real talk, I am very grateful that it was on Valentine's, because that took a big load off of, what are we going to do on Valentine's Day? And, you know, as we were riding home, I was telling my wife, we were riding by Outback, Longhorn, and I'm just like, I am so glad that we went to friend's house to eat tonight and not that whole situation, because there's lines, and it's a forced holiday of romance. And I'm like, you know, I really like getting together with friends. So
yeah,
that's what we did this week too. We kind of went over there
and we did that just for you. I mean, just for you.
Man.
Well, you know, a long time ago, I think we decided that, you know, when we were early in our marriage, we would, you know, of course, I always wanted to go out somewhere for Valentine's. And, you know, that was just part of the whole, you know, this is how you show me that you love me. And, we realized a recurring theme of super packed restaurants, super long wait for your food to show up. Sometimes by the time you got there until your meal showed up, it could be 30 to 40 minutes, bad service, overstressed waiters. And so we just realized, you know, let's not go out for Valentine's, and we have a better meal experience and just a better time.
We made some good memories.
Yeah, it was fun.
And then the brisket was awesome, and the cobbler, man, I violated a principle, and I felt really bad. So the cobbler gets brought out the oven, right? And it's just sitting on the counter. And like, a girl brought it out the oven. I thought she had brought it to cook it. I'm like, she's obviously trying to serve this, but everybody's talking so much. I'm like, I'm not going to insult this poor girl and let her cobbler go untasted. So I grabbed I loaded up on some cobbler, and then April comes around. She goes, oh, what happened to the cobbler? I'm like, what? I don't know. What happened? Somebody ate some of it. And I'm like, with a spoon in my mouth, what are you talking about? Because evidently it's supposed to sit. Well, it sat right in my mouth with smoke and steam. It was so good. This is how I grade cobbler. If I need ice cream, then the cobbler is not there. I didn't even need, it's kind of like steak. I don't need sauce on my steak unless you didn't do your job cooking it.
That's right.
Or I didn't do my job. That cobbler was awesome, April.
Aww.
So anyways, it was good. And actually, it's funny that, you know, we met this past week, because what we're going to talk about today kind of birthed out of me having dinner at your house.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I'm sitting, you know, in your living room, and there's this photo on the wall of Sola de Gloria. I'm like, that's really nice. And it's like painted. I'm like, that's kind of cool. And then I go sit in your dining room, and we're looking out, and there's this like water painting. And then I just asked you, I was like, where do you get this? And you're like, my daughter paints it. Mm-hmm. I'm like, are you serious? Mm. And that really got me thinking about something that I think is a pretty good conversation to have in our family. So today, let's go ahead and move into In Your Family, because I think this is a pretty good conversation. You ready?
Ready.
All right. So, yeah, art in your family. I know on the front end, some people are going to hear that. They're going to get so excited. And some of you are going to be like, oh no, these hippies are taking over the channel, and they want to talk about their subjective opinions in art. No and yes. But, you know, regardless of what anyone thinks of him, one of my favorite musicians is John Foreman. He's the lead singer from Switchfoot. And I've had the opportunity to talk with him a few times. And one time I was at a concert of his. He shared this quote, and I thought it was really good. And it said this, that art is that one space where the will of God interacts with the sovereignty of man. I think that's a fantastic quote, because, you know, us sitting around this table, we're all high sovereignty people. God is an author. He is in control. And sometimes the question is, well, where does man come into that? Where does our expression? And I think art is one of the most beautiful things because God is literally interacting with us where we're at in our person and calling this art out. It's fantastic. So when I see like the art on your walls, especially one that's directly, echoing the truths of God, I'm like, there's something very holy in that. And I think a lot of times as parents, and I'm not, this isn't an indictment. This is something I've seen is a lot of times, well, art is, we sign our kids up for band class or we send them to art, but there is an amazing opportunity if you're a parent when it comes to interacting with the arts, a gospel opportunity, salvation opportunities, in addition to just having some common things to talk about. So that being said, I want to open up, this conversation. Art can be, music. It's drawing. It's the expression of humanity as reflecting their creator. Because our God made things. He is in his own right an artist. So when we do that, we're copying him. So I would love just to hear, how has this conversation permeated in your family over the year, and what impact does it even have in today?
Well, we talked about, and we actually talked with our kids about this a little bit as we were prepping for this, because one of the things about kids being our children being the ages they are is we can now ask them how did these things land? These things that we think we were trying to do, did it actually work the way that we think it did? So the question we asked was, how do you foster creativity in kids? How do you get kids to aspire to that thing you were just talking about reaching upwards towards beauty, towards excellence in something? And it was really interesting to just kind of get their perspective. And one of the things was, just give them time to do that, and so if you have, you have to build that into your schedule. And for us, it was part of the educational process. It's part of how we designed the curriculum. That was part of what we added in there, but just building that time in and then giving them space to let that play out however your kid does it.
Well, I think also, I know the arts, like especially like fine arts, that was important to me growing up. It was important to Robert growing up. We experienced it in somewhat different ways. I started taking piano lessons when I was 5, and just still to this day, piano has been with me ever since. And I was in orchestra in middle school and high school. I played the harp in orchestra and was in choir. And so we just have always had a love for arts, and I totally agree with you about the, I am in awe regularly when I hear just fantastic music. And I like classical music too. Just from my upbringing, I can listen to a Beethoven symphony and be, brought to tears, because to me, it's just such an amazing display of what you were talking about, God and his will and his creativity, and the way he has given us the ability to even participate in artistic and creative things. It's just, to me, it's an amazing gift. And so I know with our kids, making that time available for them included, for us, it included things like, I taught my kids some piano, when they were younger. Of course, there's kind of a joke about a lot of piano teachers can teach everybody's kid except their own.
Right.
And so I taught piano lessons for 20 years, but when it came to teaching my own kids, I eventually had to actually sign them up with piano lessons with a friend of mine who was also a piano teacher, so that there could be I knew that, we wouldn't say, well, we can do that later. We'll do that later in the day, and we just don't get to it. So I made time. That was an intentional thing to still make sure they got exposed to that. And I know like our daughter was in dance, even with like the competitive speech and debate that they participated in middle school and high school. There were some of the speech categories that they participated in definitely had an artistic element to it. Some of them were much more theatrical, and And, our youngest kid especially got involved in a Shakespeare class in high school, with like a local homeschool group that we participated in, and they would build sets and practice and put on Shakespeare productions at the end of the year. That we still like to go to those. Our kids are all grown and out of it now, but there's that class is still going, and we still like to go every year and see the Shakespeare plays. And I think a lot of those things just kind of help. And you don't have to be involved in all those things. And there's other types of things you can get involved in. I think we even had them take an art class a couple of different times, and just like I think it was maybe like an 8-week art class. Maybe it was a 12-week art class. And I think that taught our kids some foundations that I wouldn't have known to teach them. And I mean, I think that just sort of helped unlock some giftedness that God had given them, and they just have run with it since then.
Yeah, and when it comes to art, like under the understanding of, like we were talking about, connecting it back to the ultimate creator. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's his name. He even gives his own self, and that he would let us participate in that at all is fantastic. And one of the things that is just so unique about art is because, when you look at scripture, how much of it is artistic expression? A lot. Obviously, we initially think about the Psalms, but how much poetry is in scripture. Mm-hmm. And even in New Testament scriptures, there's entire songs and hymns sang in the middle of some of these books that are written.
And even the structure in some of the books and some of the letters and the way things are written, there's an artistic, there's a structure to it that sometimes there's like a symmetry of structure, as starting at certain books of the Bible, moving into the middle of that and out to the end. And when I started to realize that was even just amazing to me.
And I think one of the things that, to kind of go back to just the nature of art itself, all humans make art. You go back to cave paintings, there's art. And one of the things that can be intimidating for a parent today, if we get on a practical level, is, oh my gosh, some of the art is, by definition, god awful, right? Mm-hmm. Like we just went through the Grammy things a few weeks ago where they dressed up like Satan and perform a ritual. Some of that's shock value, but they are expressing something, right? They're expressing the nature of their heart. I personally think that they're an active suppression of God. So if you're going to suppress something to be reality, you have to hate that thing and deny reality. Mm-hmm. So how do we interact with that? And I was looking at that, something came to my mind I wanted just to put out there and run past y'all. And it's not just art. It has to do with culture in general, but I think it's so good when it comes to art. When it comes to art, there's 3 ways to handle art. And the first one is we receive it, right? Because some art is worthy of reception. Some of this, the songs we sing in church on Sunday, right? We look at some of the art that's been done over the years. It's fine to receive it. And then there's other art we should reject. We should reject certain things because they go against the teachings that what we believe. They go against our core. And then there's a third element, and I really love this, and that is redeeming. Because that's what the Holy Spirit does. Like, he is the God of redemption. And when it comes to art, some art we can redeem for God's purposes. I'll give you an example. Last night, so I like classic rock a lot. Like I play guitar, so I've always liked it, and I've decided I wanted to share some of what I consider to be the greatest songs with my children. And not like, there are great songs that are deep cuts. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. But then there are just like great songs that are amplified if they know why. So yesterday, I pulled up the live show of Leonard Skinner's Freebird. And I told my son, I said, listen, we're going to watch this song. You're probably not going to like it at first, but then you're going to love it. And because you know how that song goes. I mean, the last 6 minutes is just like mind melting. It's amazing. But it's really neat because I'm sitting here, I'm like, okay, he doesn't understand Freebird about him leaving and being his own, he break up hard and stuff. So I was just sitting there saying, okay, like, how can I want to do this and not just be dumb, because he's not going to want to listen to the first half. So as he's singing, I said, hey, you see that guy singing right there? He's like, yeah. I was like, he died? It's like, what? I was like, yeah, he died in an airplane crash. See that guy playing guitar? He was in the airplane with him. And then my son just like looked at him and he's like, they're dead now? And then I was able to, yeah. So let's, we had a little kind of like just pulling it out, saying, yeah, we all die, son. You got to be ready. And then we had that little moment, and then, melting, shredding guitars came out, and it just like the glory of God filled the room. It was great. But, when it comes to art, there are some things that should be rejected. And then there's some things that can be redeemed. And I wonder if there's any ways. I know, Robert, I've heard of you doing this even in TV, right? Because television is acting, which is artistic. And I've heard how you use even ungodly stuff to not redeem the art, but to reject the art and redeem a biblical principle out of it. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, we do that. And I think it's important, one of the things that we talk about in, both literature and television and movies, the writer, the author, the director, they're always trying to do something because everybody recognizes at a deep, deep level, art is worship. It means something deeply. That's why the Grammys do what they do. That's why musicians do what they do. That's why people talk about, even people with no concept of spirituality, when they get into some artistic pursuit, it just stirs that in us. And I think it's part of that image of God in each of us that is unpacked when we do something artistic and do something creative. But yeah, what we were talking about, my kids have joked that I have ruined a great many movies and TV shows for them because, we'll do things like Transformers is one of my greatest examples. Is we were watching a Transformers animated thing one time, and right in the middle of it, I pause it.
Oh.
It's like, oh, do you see what just happened there? They're just saying that that the Autobots and the Decepticons are part of this. Omnicron and Cybertron are these two equal and opposite, good and evil, and they're always in balance. And if one of them gets too powerful, then the other one has to come back up. You see what worldview that is, and the kids are like, Dad, but it's come back out, and it's funny that all of our kids have come back, and some of their friends too have come back and said, yeah, you ruined that thing for me, because now I always hear that in my head when I see that. But they see the worldview, right? Because the artist is trying to do something. They're trying to take you to a place. That's the same reason that the Psalms are in Scriptures, because God's trying to take us to a place. He's trying to build us into a relationship, our souls with Him. And an artist is doing that. And so that's why a lot of the great art in the Western tradition, a lot of the great art is religious, because that was the thing that the artist, even artists, when you read about their lives, they weren't particularly religious people a lot of times, and a lot of times they were pretty hideous people, but they recognized those deep truths that they were trying to call people to.
Yeah, so when it comes to this, and that's one of the things I love about taking your kid into the culture, but holding their hand while they're there, not like literally, but metaphorically, and all the while encouraging creativity in the middle of it. And I think that's important. And I also would say, aside from encouraging creativity, another thing that it's important for us to do would be we should also seek to inspire them with actual great art. Because if we don't expose our children to things that are of high quality, they're going to find it. Mm-hmm. It's just going to be the Dollar General version of it,
right?
More often than not, until they have established worldview that's strong. So inspire, get them in front of great art. I remember the first concert I went to ever was a quarter of a mile from where I live today. It was at a place called Patriot Hall. My mom took me there when I was like 10. I became a Christian when I was 9. So I'm like, no, just like I was like 8. I wasn't even a believer. She took me there. It was a band called Watermark. They're an old school Christian band. In the middle of the set, all the power goes out at Patriot Hall. And they just sit down on stage and play the guitar. And they're singing hymns. And I'm like, I was 8. I remember that. And my mom kind of set the stage for that. And then she took me to a Carmen concert. That's where I met Jesus. It's like art it's not just for entertainment. And I think that's something that separates Christians possibly from other parts of the world is music is, at the end of the day, I can appreciate a musician. It becomes, wow, he's great. He's aspirational. This is quality entertainment. But what we get to do as Christians is we get to trace it all the way back to the originator of art. We get to appreciate it. John Piper calls this Christian hedonism, right? I get to like have enjoyment and fulfillment in everything, even art, because I know where it truly comes from. So being able to pull your kids into those spaces. And then another thing that I would put in here, and I know you've done this in your house, and you kind of alluded to it a little bit, but when it talks about create a supporting environment for art to happen, sometimes we say that and you're like, ooh, is that scary? Because I'm encouraging my kid to express themselves, and sometimes that can be terrifying, right? But what I would ask you is, what are some things that parents can actually do to create a supportive environment of artistic lifestyle and expression in their home?
Well, on a very practical level, you can supply them with tools and things that they can have to work with. And I know one of the things that we often did, like at birthdays and Christmas time and stuff, when I was kind of thinking back to things, there were many times where some part of the gifts we were giving them were things that had to do with art of some kind. And when I talk about art, I'm not just talking about, drawing or painting. That's just, it could be other things too. But even, Legos, totally Legos could be artistic. I know our oldest kid was from an early age, he would build the thing that, you buy a Lego set for a thing, and then he would take it apart, and then he would build all kinds of other things. And as he got older and older and more interested in like an architectural mind and an engineering mind, I mean, he still enjoyed trying to come up creatively and build all kinds of interesting things. And, but he was the kid that, one time when he was like elementary school age, I think, we got him some origami books, and origami paper. That was one of his gifts. They've gotten, little art sets, paint sets, or books on how to draw. I know he got a book one time on, he was showing an interest in trying to draw like little cartoon characters, and we got him a book on how to draw cartoons. And I don't know if it was that book that set him off or what, but he can draw very expressive cartoon people and things. And sometimes I'm just amazed how he can just take a pencil and throw some stuff on a paper, and you see expression in these little cartoon creatures or people. And there's little pencil marks that show movement in ways that, so a lot of my artisticness is in music and there's some other ways that I have creativity, but actual drawing is not one of them. That skipped me. That went through my grandfather, my mom. It skipped me. It went to my kids. I'm more of a stick figure person. But my kids can just, two of our kids can draw, paint, and, make things that I'm just in awe of. And, but I think, and then we've got our youngest, who any instrument he picks up, he can figure out how to play. And, he's a kid that was like, I think I'm going to learn how to play guitar now. And by the end of the weekend, he was playing songs, and, anyway, it's just,
you got a really good point in there though. When you talk about giving them tools, sometimes that's a material, it's a pencil, it's a paint set, right? But sometimes it's a skill. And so you have to look at that and say, okay, you're interested in drawing people. Here's a book on, or we'll put you in a class, and it might be a one-time seminar type of thing with an artist. Hey, let's learn how some of these techniques for shading or for how to show motion in your cartoons. And then all of a sudden, it unlocks that ability for the kid to be creative independently, because they've learned how to express themselves with the skill that's there. And I think that's something that we often forget, is that you can't just immediately jump out and be free. You have to build the skills up to a level so that you can show that independent creativity.
And then also, when they're showing any of that creativity, it's so important as parents to celebrate that.
Yes.
Just by you having your children's art on display in your house, you never have to say a word. That's willing to take up surface area in my house. That is celebrating it. And
it shows value.
It shows value. And ultimately, it's because it's not because the art is the artist behind it. Even if the art's great, this holds nothing compared to the image bearer who made it.
And that's interesting that you say that, because that's one of the things that our daughter said as we were talking about this, earlier this week. She's like, yeah, and you kept some of our stuff and displayed it and put it on the refrigerator, put it on the walls for a while. And, they made so much stuff that, it didn't tend to stay up for very long. But it did show value. And that's one of the things I would not have predicted that impacted them.
And if you're a parent and you have young kids, I bought my wife this for Christmas. It's really cool. You can get it on Amazon. You know how your kids like draw you stuff at school and church and on the sheets of paper? There's these frames, and every time your kid brings you home another drawing, you just slip it down to the front of the frame. It'll hold like 100. So every week, it's just the art's constantly rotating, and then you gotta.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah, it's really simple. It looks like a picture frame, but it's specifically made to hold the square sheet of paper that your kids would do. But just having that displayed is important, and allowing your kids the freedom to be artistic. Mm-hmm. So my dad, he used to be on the side. He videoed weddings before I was born. I didn't know this, but he had bought a camera. So this was back in like 94, 95, and it was the big VHS cameras. And I just remember getting that camera, which was very expensive back then. And my dad's like, you want to use it? Use it. And I just started recording stuff. And it's so funny because they're really bad. It's funny. Oh, gosh. If that got out, I would cancel myself. But one night I remember I was down the hall playing with my friends, and my dad's friends were down the hall. And everyone's laughing. I'm like, why are y'all laughing? I go down there. They're showing my tape laughing. And it was really embarrassing. But looking back on it, I'm like, now I video weddings. And I think like that little bit of, affection and appreciation went a long way. So, but so that's kind of where we just wanted to take this conversation today is we want to encourage you, get involved in your child's artistic life. Don't let it be, it's such a fun way. It doesn't have to be awkward. It's a way you could show support that you almost always get a return of investment when you show over support in this area. And when you do it with your child or honor it, you're literally pouring into the image bearer of God.
And something else that I just thought I would throw out there, because there's so many different ways that you can, intentionally sneak some art exposure or practice into things. I mean, there's even games. I know when I was a kid growing up, there was a game, I think it was Parker Brothers, I think was the brand, but it was a game called Masterpiece. And it literally was an auction game where you were bidding on, you had money, kind of like Monopoly money, and you were bidding on art, and there was like, instead of like cards or something that you might shuffle a deck and put in the middle, these were larger, glossy cardstock cards with famous artwork on them, and the information about the artist and when it was painted and what the name of it was on the back, and you're they're randomly being matched with art values, and nobody knows what the art value is until you auction and you buy it, and then you get to look on and see how much that art is really worth, and you're trying to pay less and sell it. But the point is that it's a fun game, but your kids are getting exposed to actual art. And there's another game for that one, you'd probably have to go look on eBay or something because it's long been out of print. But we actually have 2 copies of it. But there's another game called Telestrations, which you can get at Walmart, or that's current available now, and it involves drawing, and it's just a fun. There's fun games that you can get to help encourage some of that creativity and just have them having good memories and good experiences combined with the arts.
And combine art with stuff you like too. Like in our house, our kids don't call it art; they call it crafties. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And like I bought a whole bunch of Ninja Turtle crafties for Christmas, so they're like painting Ninja Turtles.
Yes.
But getting involved in you will not regret that in the long haul. So, well, hey, let's go ahead and let's talk about what we talked about in church this week, because wow, that's all I'm gonna say.
I feel like I say that every week.
Well, how stop and just take a break, like. How blessed are we to be able to say that?
100% blessed.
I feel like we've been, I feel like we're in the All-Stars, and like the team is just knocking it out every week. And
yes.
I'm so like I take so many notes, and I love just pulling stuff in our life. And the next couple weeks we're spending on 6 verses, right? Is it 6 or 9?
6.
6 verses. Yeah, Psalm 23. And I love this because first of all, I've actually never heard a series on Psalm 23. A lot of us, we memorize it when we're kids, so you just check that box, we got it. But today, we went through just the first couple of verses, and Dan just mined so much goodness out of there. So that being said, we start off with the illustration of our shepherd, and as we kind of lead into that, it's really easy for me to be like, okay, he's a shepherd. This is David using an illustration that he knows. But I also just think about the nature of what a shepherd does. And with his sheep who are rotten and nasty and dumb, it's like, I don't think the Bible is intentionally trying to insult us.
I was going to say, I feel called out, Delmar.
It's just true, right? It's just true. And he talks us how he leads us beside still waters. And there are three big things that are happening as he leads us by these still waters. And I would encourage you, this is a sermon I would encourage you to listen to. You can listen to it on YouTube. You can go to harmonychurchsumter.com or .org, and you can hear it. But the first thing it says, that how do we know if we are resting in the Lord, if we are being fully satisfied in him, if he is our good shepherd, is that he is calling us to rest.
Yeah, I think that's huge. If there's anything that our society needs right now, it's rest, right? And the ability to do that, and just for the hope that's in here, that our God, and Dan started off talking about how there's 17 personal pronouns in this. Everything, the Lord is my shepherd. This is a statement of God's relationship to me as an individual, to you as an individual, and what he wants for us, the way he wants to relate to us. And so when it says, God is my shepherd and he does all these things, that means he wants us to be in that rest. He wants us to have that kind of relationship with him. And that is, that's mind blowing.
And I really like that he pointed out, resting is the enemy of being busy, right? And the things that keep us from that rest is fear, conflict. They have parasites and flies and hunger. And those are the things, and like how easily transferable those are to our walk. What are the things that keep us from resting? I know fear, anxiety, but also like if you think about just us, if we are, our Father who rested, right? Even after God made everything, there was that day of rest. He even modeled it for us. Yet, how often am I even guilty of not participating in the thing he modeled?
Yeah, it is so easy to get busy, to not rest. And just a quick call back to what we were talking about in the first segment, where we were talking about art. One of the things about reaching into art and nature, and you can see it here in Psalm 23, right? He's talking about still waters and green pastures. There's these nature imagery, this nature imagery that's in there, and that's something that you can't just get that in a moment. You can't take a snapshot of peaceful still waters and go, oh, I get that. You kind of have to sit in it for a little bit. You got to sit there and look at it. You got to experience that for a bit of time, and so you have to rest and be in here. And what God is promising is that he's going to be able to take away our fear. He's going to be able to take away, those things that distract us away and prevent us from resting.
I really like how he was talking about the fact that the sheep were laying down in green pastures. And, what do sheep normally do in green pastures? They're eating the yummy green grass,
right.
And if a sheep is in the middle of a green pasture laying down, it means that he's satisfied. He has everything that he needs, and he can just lay down and just be there.
And if you think about it, that's when you are completely satisfied. That's when you can rest. It shouldn't be once we're ragged out and exhausted. Actually, when you're tired at the end of the day is work, there should be a level of satisfaction that you're tired because you know you worked hard, which kind of butts up to something that maybe you've struggled with. I do. Any y'all ever guilt rest? Where you're resting and you feel guilty because you feel like you should be working?
All the time.
Yes. And it's something that, I know that's very convicting for me. And I sometimes when I recognize that I'm, making excuses for why I have to do a little more work,
Right.
And then I'm like, this seems to be a pattern. Maybe I need to have a little more, some more boundaries because, I own my own business. And so sometimes it's one of the things about that is it's never really totally turned off.
Right.
There's always something you can think of that you could be working on. And I know for me, it's hard for me to, if I'm done with one thing, my mind's already like, well, there's this other thing. There seems to always be something hanging over my head, even if it's in the future that, well, I could get a start on that too. And so sometimes I have to remind myself, no, you just need to rest, and it's okay to not. And sometimes I've had to actually, I know this might sound weird, or maybe you guys can relate. I've had to, sometimes to redirect myself back into remembering it's okay to rest and you don't have to feel guilty about it. I will schedule out a day and schedule times like this is the time frame where I'm going to work on, this type of thing. And this is a time of day where I might work on cleaning up some stuff. And this is a part of the day where I'm going to work on, this is going to be this is leisure and this is resting, or this is, reading God's word or something. Sometimes when I can put that out, it gives me the freedom to say, this isn't me being irresponsible. This is my scheduled time for rest, which may sound weird, but if you're finding yourself in a situation where you're recognizing you're kind of having difficulties resting, sometimes you might have to transition by doing something like that.
Well, a couple things I would just submit as well is one of the keys to resting guilt-free is work. Like when you're working, work. Get the work done. So that way, when you're resting, you're like, no, I worked today. I earned this. But also, there are some of you kind of like me, you love what you do. Like Friday was one of my best days in months. I'm teaching hermeneutics to a student at breakfast. Like that's like a drug, right? And then I met with a young adult for coffee to talk about life. And then afterwards, I met with another student and I got full, right? Also, that's draining. Well, Saturday I wake up and I've been wanting to grab some lunch with a guy in our church for some time. And he texts me at like 10 on Saturday. He's like, you want to get lunch today? And that little guilt thing is like, you've been working on it. And then it just hit me, especially knowing where we're going in our conversation. I'm like, I can't be like a super hypocrite, but it's like, hey man, can we catch it later? Like I really wanted to, but I was like, the last thing my wife needs right now is me leaving the house on a Saturday. And I think that's a fair point too. If we're not resting, your children and your spouse, they need you to rest. Because if you burn it at both ends and that's all you model in front of your kids, what are you raising? Mm-hmm. You're raising kids who are going to have depression and anxiety. They're going to be overworked. They're going to not appreciate their life. Maybe have some savings that they never touch because they work. And then, one last thing I would just say in regards to rest is if your job does not allow you to rest, or there are certain jobs, even in churches, you feel guilt taking off. If you can't resolve that issue, it's big enough where you need to figure that out.
Right.
Maybe that's not the job for you.
Exactly. That's kind of what I'm getting at.
Well, and I think the principle from the sermon today that I think relates very strongly to that is this idea that God has given us what we need, which is not always what we want, right? We were kind of talking about that in a separate context earlier this week, but God has given us, he gives us what we need. And so we can rest in that. I don't have to continually strive to make and do and earn, because he's given me what I need. Now that means I have to be willing to be satisfied in what he's given me. And that might be different than my desires, which goes back to last week's sermon, right? Where we were talking about interpersonal conflict, and it comes from our desires and our wants and things that are unsatisfied. So I have to in one sense, I have to learn to rest in that. And this has been difficult for me at times in my life, right? To rest in the place where God has put me today, trusting that He's put me here, trusting that I'm in this, that I'm in this situation, I'm in this position, for a reason, and then I can have confidence and be able to just maybe not relax and rest in that sense, but to be satisfied and to rest in that, and to know that God, that I'm right where God wants me to be.
100%, because what I think I hear you saying is that there are seasons where you're just busy and you should be resting, but for this season, that you're going to have to crank it up to 11, but we need to be doing that with the understanding that there is a resting coming. It's like the light at the end of the tunnel. It's when you don't have that hope of renewal later, that you really can push into the anxieties and the things that come with being burnt out. Which brings us to the next thing he says the second thing our shepherd does in our life, he says in Scripture, he restores my soul. And I loved his illustration because Dan actually went and found source material on Psalm 23 written by a shepherd. And the whole concept behind this restoring my soul, this renewal, is like sometimes sheep can actually fall over in the field. I didn't know this. And they're like turtles. They can't get back over. And they just lay there until a wolf comes and eats them. And sometimes the renewal, those sheep fall over because of two things. The first is they're too comfortable, right? And they're so satisfied, they're not really paying attention, and then they fall. Or the other one was abundance. They get too fat and they waddle around and they're laying upside down. And the whole concept is the shepherd, when he sees that, he knows that sheep is dead unless he does something about it. And that's the power that God has in our lives as our shepherd, as he brings us that renewal.
And I think it's really interesting, because there's a little bit of a paradox in there from the last thing, because God's given us what we need. He puts us in these places of abundance. He puts me in green pastures, beside the water, a place where I can get the food and the drink that I need. He puts me in those places. But if I'm too comfortable, if I get too comfortable in that, I forget to rely on Him. And so we have to live in that. We have to live in that balance that says God has given me what I need, but at the same time, I have to continue to rely on Him to continue to provide that. I can't just be fat, dumb, and happy there, because I end up, flapping around on my back.
Because if you're not, then you do become comfortable. I was talking to a youth pastor. Y'all know him. Y'all love him too. He left his position years ago, and I asked him why. And he said, to be honest, Dell, it's because I could do it. And it had become my strength. And much respect, because he chose a life that's a lot more difficult than what he's doing now. But it's like the fact he could have stayed and cashed in, he realized this. And I think that would be the encouragement today, especially if you're a parent. Where are you comfortable as a parent? Because that might be a place where we need to shake it up, where we need to have an awkward conversation with our child that we never had. I can't tell you how many parents have come to me and they're like, hey, we thought everything is fine until it wasn't, because we're in that comfort. And I've even gone through that with my child. You think you're in a good season, you don't know what they do when you're leaving the room to their little brother, Aww. So it is important. And one of the warnings that we received today in the sermon, this was so good, I'm probably going to steal it. I'll give Dan credit. But it's the whole thing. I've seen so many times on movies where there's shepherds in the field, and I've seen the shepherd carrying a sheep around his neck. I never knew what that was about. But what that's about is, if there's a sheep that keeps going astray, there are times when that shepherd will actually chase that sheep down, break its leg, and then the shepherd will carry that sheep, the full weight of that sheep, until its leg heals, and the sheep knows the shepherd will go out of his way to carry me. I'm not going to stray anymore. And how many times in our life have we incurred things is because the Lord is like, "Well, I got to snap something because you keep running away."
Right.
Yeah, that's a a harsh lesson to have to think about, but at the same time, it shows that love. What if that shepherd doesn't do that discipline on the sheep? What happens to the sheep? Well, he falls down a cliff. He falls in the water and drowns. He gets eaten by a wolf, right? Something happens that is much, much worse than the temporary pain of a broken leg and the inconvenience of not being able to bounce around for a while. But once the sheep comes back into the appropriate relationship with the shepherd in obedience, that's when the sheep then again has freedom to do what he wants to do.
And what a great, easily transferable thing to us who have been shepherded by our good Father as we shepherd our children. I am not saying you should go club your kids' knees, all right? I'm not saying you should, snap your kids' legs. But there is a level of, we are supposed to discipline. But like the good shepherd, once they're disciplined, we're with that child, right? We're with them, helping them be back on the path of righteousness. Because if he just breaks his leg and leaves him, well, that's a horrible shepherd, right?
Right.
But what does he do? He carries them. And there's so many times when you discipline your children that it's actually in those moments that they need you to carry them, because they don't know, you just inflicted pain on them. And if you just walk away, they're like, why did that happen?
Right.
Go ahead.
Oh, the point of discipline isn't just to say you did something wrong, here's your consequence. The point of discipline is to help restore and to correct and to help bring them back where they're supposed to be. And right, if you're just handing out some kind of discipline or some harsh discipline or something, and the whole takeaway your kid gets from that is, I did something wrong and this was my punishment. But there's no love, and there's no bringing them back in and showing them, that the discipline is coming from a place of love, not from a place of, anger, frustration, and, and punishment. In the same way, like God disciplines those he loves, so that we learn to rely on him and grow our faith in him.
It's very interesting as he disciplines us in love. And if we look at the picture of the shepherd carrying the sheep, at that point, he's carrying that sheep. The other sheep are not getting carried at that moment. There is a special tenderness that comes with discipline that we would be very good to not overlook. And there's tenderness and discipline from the Lord as well. And he does that as our shepherd. And it's all stemming from one thing, and it's coming from the third aspect of this, our good shepherd. It's in verse 3. What does he call us to? Righteousness, right? And let's just be honest. It's only because of this righteousness that he does renew us, and that he does help us rest. And I just absolutely love, the two types of righteousness. There's the positional righteousness, that you are a child of God. By virtue of that, you have access to the King. You have the righteousness of Christ. Your filth is gone. But then there's also the practical righteousness. There's the righteousness that's working out in us every day through our sanctification and becoming more like God and in our disposition. So as we go about faithing, if you will, and carrying out our righteousness, how do you see this translating to both us as children of God, but also those with children?
Yeah, I think it's kind of what we talked about a minute ago, and I think April, when you said that about discipline is about restoration. I mean, that's just a key. Restoration to what? Well, restoration to this path of righteousness. And it's understanding that there is a way that God needs us to behave to become more like him, and that in that when we become more like him, we manifest his glory. And I think the way Dan said it is when we, because the verse is, he leads me in the path of righteousness for his name's sake, right? So it's not it's not just so we follow the rules. It's because it brings glory to God. Because when we structure our behavior, when we structure our lives to be in line with God's righteousness, it allows God's glory to manifest more fully in his creation throughout, because we're we're behaving properly towards each other. We're behaving properly towards our children. We're behaving properly towards, just nature. And I think as parents, when we we model that behavior and organize our lives towards righteousness, and then we help train our children intentionally towards that same righteousness, and we bring everything in line, and it brings things into harmony, into better harmony with one another, better harmony with God, and it brings glory to His name as we do all of those things.
And man, that is so good, because I was even listening to a thing, and I commented, this one pastor this week was talking about like how to get God to look at you. You need to worship Him in a way He's never seen before. And I wasn't rude, but I was like, that's not God. Whatever you're talking about, you're not going to catch Him off guard. And he's like, you want Him to delight? You want to delight God? Worship Him in a new radical way. I was like, no. If you want to delight God, Scripture is very clear. God is delighted in glory, right? Like in glory. When we are so obedient that it doesn't, if He could be caught off guard, He still wouldn't, right? Like that's, even though He can't, like He wants that pure, like what you just said, Robert, is so true. Like that's what He wants in us and our family. He wants us to glorify Him through the way we are satisfied in Him, to the point where we're rested, we're renewed, we're righteous in both the way we're living in the world, but in our homes as well.
And I think that's a key thing that's in there. And I want everybody not to miss this. It's not that we are glorifying Him and it's going to be a struggle for us and we're always going to be, just trying to do that because it's hard work. No, I mean, when we glorify Him, our lives function better because we are more at peace with the way the universe is supposed to function. Yeah. And so when we are bringing Him glory, that is actually when we are the most fulfilled. That's when our lives are the most structured, when our lives are the most, when we're the most creative, like we talked about before.
That actually gets back to, one of the things that Dan had said in his sermon was I think for him, one of the big takeaways he wanted everyone to go away with, which was, when I'm full of God's presence, I don't feel compelled to chase after things that don't satisfy.
That was awesome.
And yeah, that was what I wrote in my little big point of the day circle that I have in my journal. But, when we, and, even he talked about when we trust in God, it's one thing to trust in God when it makes sense and when everything seems to be going the way you want. But when you trust in God, even when it doesn't make sense, when hard things come your way and you say, even though this happened, even though I'm going through this thing, I'm still going to trust God. He's like, the world sees this and they see a difference in you, and you're able to testify to the glory of God to the world when you trust in Him, no matter what comes your way.
Yeah. And when we're fully satisfied, that's when we can trust Him. It's this weird thing because it seems like it's counterintuitive, but like giving it up is how we receive the rest. So, ultimately our hope today is that for anyone listening right now, there's parents listening right now, their child has just entered a phase of life they were not expecting. And it's not been easy, but what we know in Scripture is you have everything you need in Christ. You have it all, right? Some of us right now, you're in a really great season. And the encouragement we get from this text is this: don't become comfortable, right? It is a matter of being with God, which is an active daily thing, relying on Him, but not becoming too comfortable in Him in your reliance upon Him. It's a balance. But we hope that this has been encouraging for you today. It's been encouraging for me because, especially that game. I'll have to go try that game out with my kid.
Illustrations?
Yeah, that sounds pretty good.
It's so fun.
So that's good. So anyways, it's been good being here. We hope that this week is a harmonious week for you. My name is Delmar.
I'm Robert.
And I'm April.
Take care. This is Living in Harmony.